Well, hello and welcome to CDO Magazine interview series. I am Maribeth Achterberg with Molson Coors and a member of the CDO Magazine Global Editorial Board. In partnership with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers, we are offering a series of interviews with thought leaders in industry. And today, I have the pleasure of talking with Mark Panthofer. He's the VP of DevSecOps and Cloud at nvisia. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, wonderful. So I'm Maribeth Achterberg again. I'm with Molson Coors. I'm the VP of Solution Delivery with the organization. And Mark, can you give us a little more background on yourself?
Sure. I've started actually with nvisia back in 1996 and had a lot of roles over the years, and including I actually took a 7-year break from nvisia and went out and worked with some venture capital companies and then some smaller IT shops, very lean organizations where we had 1,800 websites doing daily deployments. And that was back in about 2010. So that's really where I kind of started to get into really my first exposure to DevOps. The last 6 years really got into DevOps by way of Docker and Kubernetes. As a result of that, at nvisia, we had a partnership with Docker, and I led that relationship. And I actually ended up writing a book, being asked by Pact Publishing to write a book, and it was Mastering Docker Enterprise Edition. And so that sort of got me into the DevOps area. And then the last few years have really been focused around helping cloud enable or helping organizations go from sort of more cloud enabled, in other words, they're doing things in the cloud, to more cloud native DevOps. And with really that goal of realizing really what Agile started to promise us quite a while ago, but combining that with DevOps culture and getting some results and really kind of moving toward those elite performers everybody wants, right? Everybody wants the 973, more frequent deployments and 6,570, times shorter windows from the time you push code to the time it makes it to production. So that's really, I've been, again, involved in that the last few years, and excited to talk a little bit more about that experience as it relates to some of the data issues today.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's a fantastic background. And as we set the context for the discussion, I think that gives a really good purview of your ability to speak to moving from a traditional on-premise IT model, and that encompasses technology, processes, and people, to that cloud-enabled and then even cloud-native operating model. It means that the data and data-fluent people start to become more prominent focuses for organizations. What are some of those data challenges and considerations you're seeing with your work lately?
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest challenge at the core, and I think we can maybe have this will work its way into the rest of our conversation, really has to do with the cloud native mindset. And a cloud native mindset really focuses on these sort of independently deployable units when we think about it. And that sort of, takes us to some of the definitions around microservices and some of the cloud native environments. So, and what's really the challenge for organizations is the ability to go from a centralized sort of resource and function model, where, for instance, your database team, for instance, spins up all the databases. They poke holes in the firewalls for different application teams, and they really have their arms, sort of tight around that. And the challenge really becomes, if you really want that elite performer sort of results, you have to start to really kind of think about ditching at least the centralized resource model. The centralized function will, of course, remain in terms of governance and standards and things like that. But if you start to move from a model where you have all of your resources, again, being controlled by that one team across all applications, to the applications, infrastructure as code, deploying instances of data technology for teams. And that really fits into some of the architectures we're seeing. And it really boils down to a lot of times the ability to do this. And this is actually something that's sort of, begun to evolve quickly in the last 24 to 18 months. And that has really been around what we call platform engineering. And platform engineering, is essentially creating a group that's accountable, for implementing the specifications as code from a variety of different constituents. And those, constituents are going to be your cloud ops team. So, how is it that you want particular things to happen in Azure or AWS or GCP? Security teams, network engineering, compliance. And what we're seeing, if it's done right, the constituents around data engineering, compliance, et cetera, that has to be there as well. So representation from that, so that you can sort of engage in this new model. So you, from the data group, goes from sort of the accountable for deploying the actual database technology to more involved in providing specifications and then auditing and monitoring the implementation of those specifications as done by that platform engineering team. So it's partly the specifications, the data related tools, how you access that data. And then of course the observability related to all of the data functions and things that you want to monitor.
Yeah, it's really an interesting movement for our technical folks to be more data fluent and still very much involved with the platforms that they support, but also understanding the information that's flowing through those platforms. Don't you agree?
It's vital, especially as they become more distributed. So kind of getting in front of it from a specification perspective, but also, operationally instrumenting things, platforms and applications to be able to monitor not just the health of the systems, but aspects of your data. But I think the other part, in line with what the development teams, so you look at these highly distributed development teams, and they themselves, of course, are creating data, they're storing data, they're sharing data. And, that really gets into some of the topics around classification of data, and they need to understand what the, ramifications and sort of covenants that the organization has around that data.
So folks, we've heard from a data thought leader today. I want to thank Mark very much for joining me in this interview. Please visit cdomagazine.tech for this and additional interviews with other data thought leaders from across the globe.